Let's talk about the news of the Pittsburgh Steelers. All anybody wants to talk about this week is Davante Adams and Russell Wilson. Well, Russell Wilson made his highly anticipated return to a full day's worth of practice. I spoke to multiple wide receivers today in the locker room. That was my entire goal, was just to go around and ask these guys, hey, I know that Russell Wilson is Russell Wilson, but what can you tell me about how he looked? And the response I got from literally every single one of these guys was, Russ is Russ, man. He looks like Russ. He looks like a future Hall of Famer. He looks like a 9-time Pro Bowler. He looks like a Super Bowl champion. Everybody kept saying passes were accurate. His play action was nice. His response was very good. They said it was almost as if he didn't miss any time at all. And they said his cool, calm presence in the huddle was felt. And I said, all right, that's good to know. But the response I got was, Russ is Russ, continues to be Russ. That's great news. I've heard that, the injury didn't flare up. There was no setbacks, at least initially. The Steelers will go into tomorrow. They'll work with trainers. He will get checked out probably pretty intensely from some doctors and just say, hey, how you feeling? How we looking? Where do things currently stand? And see his level of confidence after his first full day. But you got some rollouts. I can't give it all away, but in individual drills, I could describe what happened there. And you got some rollouts for the first time all season long. Russell Wilson is rolling out. Those videos of Justin Fields and Kyle Allen doing full drills and Russell Wilson just standing there and throwing a football, done. This was a full day's worth of practice, and you saw it right from the jump. Things looked good. The ball looked smooth. There was a good spiral, good zip. Russ is back, and it comes with a lot because Russ comes back and everybody starts talking, and we could have came in here and said, Russ is back. Good day in Pittsburgh. We'll see what happens by the end of the week. But for right now, it's Justin Fields' job because Russ did take the reps with the number 2. We knew that was going to happen. Everybody starts talking because that's what we do in the sports world is we start talking. And there's 2 takes here that caught our attention that we had to address. And one of them is from a good friend, Mark Kaboly, who loves when I, quote unquote, talk shit on the podcast about him. Always make sure he hears it. And number 2 is ESPN's Dan Graziano. Both of them, in my opinion, wild takes, 2 very different directions here. Actually, the complete opposite directions when it comes to the Pittsburgh Steelers. We'll start with Mark Kaboly, who says that no matter what, doesn't matter how good Justin Fields is in week 6, he could go out there and have the greatest game of his career. There are no questions. Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes level play from the Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback. He's the backup in week 7, and the Steelers will be turning to Russell Wilson. Does not matter. That plan is already in place, and the Steelers, well, they know their quarterback the rest of the season, and it's not the guy who's been the starting quarterback the first 5 weeks and presumably is the starting quarterback in week 6. I got thoughts. I've shared these thoughts. I mean, we talked yesterday about how Justin Fields, in my opinion, has an opportunity to remain the starter for the rest of the year and put this competition away with a great game against the Raiders. Kaboly's saying otherwise. Do you think there's any truth to this? Do you think there's any truth? And I'm not saying that Kaboly isn't, he knows what he's talking about. Kaboly always knows what he's talking about. There's always something behind this. But do you think there's any truth to the speculation that the Pittsburgh Steelers, no matter what, are fully aware that Justin Fields will be the backup in week 7 and Russell Wilson will resume his starting duties after 1 week of being, I guess, healthy and active?
I definitely would not put that past Mike Tomlin. I mean, there's something to the fact that he has kept Russell Wilson as the number 1 quarterback on the depth chart and has refused to call Justin Fields the bona fide QB1 for the Pittsburgh Steelers during this entire exercise. So I would not put it past Mike Tomlin to be like, all right, I mean, no matter what Justin does here, we told Russ that he's the starting quarterback. We named Russ the starting quarterback, and he's the starting quarterback. Whenever he's ready, he's going to go in. So I think there is truth to this. I could definitely see Mike Tomlin and specifically the entire Steelers organization, the way that they operate, being of that mindset. Do I agree with it? No, not at all. I think if Justin Fields goes out and has that bounce back, you should allow him to continue to run with it. And as they say, run with the hot hand. But if they're going to stop that dead in its tracks just because they had previously named a 35-year-old a starter and his calf hasn't been healthy for the first 6 weeks of the season, I don't think that's a great move. I think, in fact, that's a horrible move, but I wouldn't put it past him.
No, I mean, I wouldn't put it past him either. I think this is a Mike Tomlin thing, but I also think that there were reasons Mike Tomlin was not naming Justin the starter through all this, but there were also reasons why he wasn't naming Russ the starter through all this. Like through training camp, he said it. He let us know the depth chart reflects how I feel. The depth chart reflects how I feel. There's a depth chart for a reason. Even when Russ wasn't on the field, you knew that Mike Tomlin thought that Russell Wilson was the starting quarterback of the Pittsburgh Steelers. And then he made that known by announcing Russ the starter before week 1. Since then, it has been a different environment. It has been a different feel. He has had a different tone. And I'm not saying that he's not sitting here thinking Russ is the guy, because I still think he wants Russ to be the guy. But I don't feel that Mike Tomlin has it set in stone that Russ is the guy. And I don't think that he has had it set in stone that Russ is the guy. Now, do I think that he would bench Justin after an average game just because he's ready to have Russ out there? Yeah, I think Justin has to either go out there and ball out, or he isn't going to have the starting job in week 7. That's how I feel. But I don't think that there's no possibility Justin is the starter for the rest of the season. I mean, Justin remains the starter this week, and I think that tells you a lot. Is the Steelers have been holding him back. There's all these reports about how Russ is getting anxious, and there's got to be some tension there, and the Steelers know that this guy is healthy. They're just doing this on purpose. There's all that talk. That talk wouldn't exist if they wanted Russ to definitely be the guy, no questions asked, because then they would have just made it happen. And Tomlin doesn't care. He could care less about what I have to say on this show. He could care less what you have to say on this show or what the national media is talking about. He doesn't hear any of it. And if he does, it doesn't bother him. He still makes the decisions he wants to make. And if he wanted Russell Wilson to be the guy, he would have just done that. He would have ripped the Band-Aid off. That's what he does. I don't know. I'm not going to shut the door on that's a Mike Tomlin move, because it is a Mike Tomlin move. I will shut the door on Tomlin's tone has changed, and therefore to have the 100% positive outlook of this is Russ's job in week 7, I just don't. There's nothing that indicates that that is the truth. There's nothing that indicates that that's how they feel. And again, Kaboly's got to have something somewhere. He always has something somewhere, but I just don't see it. I don't see it the same way that he does in this instance. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. What's something that scares you? For me, it's the obvious ones: death, loss, failure. Halloween lets us have fun with what scares us, but what about those fears that don't involve zombies and ghosts? Therapy is a great tool for facing your fears while finding ways to overcome them, because sometimes the scariest thing is not facing our fears in the first place and holding ourselves back. I'm somebody who's benefited from therapy for a long time, and I've been an advocate for therapy for years, and I'm excited to tell you guys about BetterHelp. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire and get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Overcome your fears with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/allsteelers today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/allsteelers. Then there's the other side of this, which is ESPN's Dan Graziano, who has had some wild takes the past 48 hours. I mean, you saw him say, we talked about it yesterday, George Pickens for Davante Adams, straight up make it happen. Now he's coming back saying not only will the Pittsburgh Steelers trade Davante Adams to the Las Vegas Raiders or George Pickens to the Las Vegas Raiders for Davante Adams, but they're just going to release Russell Wilson. They care less that they're going to avoid the drama. They want Justin to be the guy, and they are going to release Russell Wilson. Why? He didn't even give an explanation. If we're going to be very real about where we currently stand and what is happening here, this is his explanation of this. This is not a report. It's speculation. Worth remembering, Wilson's 1-year minimum contract salary includes a no trade clause. It's possible this ends with him getting released, not traded. Now, we could be uncertain about week 7 and who the starting quarterback is. We could be uncertain about whether or not Mike Tomlin is all in on Russell Wilson or not all in Russell Wilson where we stand. What we can be 100% certain about is that the Pittsburgh Steelers are not going to release Russell Wilson. And I don't believe there's any thought of releasing Russell Wilson because the Pittsburgh Steelers went through 3 quarterbacks last season and snuck their way into the playoffs. And there is no part of them sitting around saying, we will just rock it out the rest of the year with Kyle Allen and Justin Fields, and we'll be okay because we're hunting for a Super Bowl. And if we got to have Kyle Allen take us there, well, we feel confident that that will happen. There is a reason that even when Kyle Allen is the number 2, because Russell Wilson is inactive, Mike Tomlin refers to him as the number 3. Why? Because he is the number 3, and the Steelers want a number 2 that is worth something. And right now, that is Russell Wilson. Am I lying here? Because in my head, there is an actual 0% chance that Russell Wilson would be released by the Pittsburgh Steelers.
The only way that I could see that happening, and the only way that I could see Graziano's point here, is if Russell Wilson does not get an opportunity to start, if the Steelers continue to give Justin Fields every opportunity to start and eventually name him the starter, and Russell says, I don't want to deal with trades, I want to be released. Or if it gets to the point where Russell wants to go somewhere, a team pops up that is well in line to make the playoffs after the trade deadline, and Russ says, I want to go there. But even then, it makes no sense for the Steelers unless Russ is becoming an issue, which again, I don't think he is. I think all the drama that is played up about him late last season with the Broncos, I thought he handled that perfectly. So I don't think that he would end up becoming an issue for the Steelers. But if he continues to say, listen, there's this opportunity, you can't trade me because we're past the deadline, but I want to go there and I don't want to be here anymore. If he vocalizes that, I could see there being a chance, not a guarantee, but a chance that the Steelers decide that, okay, we'll do right by you. We'll let you walk and go to that other team. But outside of that, which is a very specific scenario, there's no way this happens.
And even in that specific scenario, you have the possibility that the Pittsburgh Steelers say, well, Russ, you're not going to cause drama because you haven't caused drama. So there's no reason for us to think you're going to start. So no, we're not going to release you. If you have an opportunity, it will come in Pittsburgh and it will be an unfortunate circumstance. But that's how we feel because we owe you nothing. You've been here for 6 months. Doesn't matter. I get it that you've completely bought into the city and that we promised you all these things and they didn't happen, but they were none of your doing. And personally, they were none of our doing. They were injury. This was the universe telling you your body was given up. It's Justin Fields' time. I don't care. I think that is one side of how that conversation goes. And then the second side of it is you have to be 100% certain that that team is going to pick you up. And the only way to do that is to tamper. And that, I mean, I get it. The NFL tampers, but they don't all the time. And you're not going to get hit with that. That's not what you're looking to do. It does have to be a very specific circumstance. I think that very specific circumstances, very unlikely where we stand here right now.